The Transformers have encountered many alien races over the years, and this week we're looking at one of the most significant, those five-faced slime of the nebula, the QUINTESSONS. The QUINTESSONS were created by writer Ron Friedman for 1986's The Transformers the Movie. As seen in the film, the aliens lived on the ocean world of Quintessa, capturing and placing on trial anyone unfortunate enough to come to the planet. The sentence was the same whether they were judged guilty or innocent: death in the jaws of the QUINTESSONS servants, the Sharkticons. This was the fate that nearly befell Autobots Hot Rod and Cup before they were saved by the Dinobots. Now, Friedman's original idea for the QUINTESSONS was simply that they were territorial aliens who prosecuted visitors to their planet for trespassing. In later rewrites of the script, they were reimagined as servants of the monster planet Unicron, who hunted down and killed the survivors of the planets he consumed. But neither of these ideas made it into the finished film, because story consultant Flint Dille had come up with his own backstory for them, which he implemented when he brought the QUINTESSONS back in the third season of the Transformers animated series. As revealed in the season premiere, Five Faces of Darkness, the QUINTESSONS were, in fact, the creators of the Cybertronian race. 12 million years ago, they had mass-produced the Transformers as robotic servants, but their creations had risen up in revolt, overthrown their cruel masters, and banished the QUINTESSONS from Cybertron. The QUINTESSONS went on to regularly appear throughout the season as a new enemy for the Transformers, using their intimate knowledge of their renegade creations in various plans to retake Cybertron, often duping the Decepticons into helping them. The trials seen in the movie didn't factor into the cartoon's stories much. Instead, the QUINTESSONS came to be characterized as a deceitful and manipulative race of capitalist entrepreneurs who exploited and meddled in the affairs of many other races for their own gain. There were several types of QUINTESSON. Most famous were the Judges, the leaders of the race, tentacled, egg-shaped beings who are what a Transformers fan will generally think of when they hear the word QUINTESSON. The Judges each had 5 rotating faces, the attribute that gave the QUINTESSON race its name, from quintus, the Latin for 5. The faces have been given a few different names over the years, but were specifically designed to represent different emotional states: smiling, angry, grimacing, suspicious, and the skull-like face of death, which delivered the fatal verdicts of the QUINTESSON's twisted trials. Other kinds of QUINTESSON are likewise referred to by their function in QUINTESSON society: tentacled prosecutors, snout-nosed bailiffs, spiked executioners, round-headed scientists, and a variety of other one-off designs. In addition to the Sharkticons, the QUINTESSONs were also served by another breed of transforming mechanoid. Initially unnamed, these robots' alligator-like beast modes led them to be dubbed Alicons in the 21st century. As cartoon original characters not represented in the toy line, the QUINTESSONs didn't appear much in other media in the 1980s. Their only appearance in the Marvel comic book was an out-of-continuity fill-in issue that adapted an episode of the cartoon. However, they did feature in the UK version of the comic as the arch-villains of the multi-part serial Space Pirates. It's important to stress, the QUINTESSONs were not presented as the creators of the Transformers in comic book continuity. The comic had already independently developed its own origin story for the Transformers that identified them as the creations of the light god Primus, who slept within Cybertron itself. Here, the QUINTESSONs were merely antagonistic aliens who targeted Cybertron for colonization after learning that their own world was on the cusp of being destroyed by a rift in space and time. In the 1990s, online fandom generally came to consider the Primus origin story for the Transformers superior to the cartoon's QUINTESSON one, leading it to become favoured by new media in the 21st century. This, in turn, has led to several stories that have sought to reconcile the two origins, finding ways to rewrite the cartoon's QUINTESSON origin story to retroactively incorporate Primus into it. The first effort came in the Transformers Universe comic from the official Transformers convention BotCon, which in 2004 posited that the Quintessons had not created the Transformers, but had actually conquered and enslaved Primus's creations early in their history. A few years later, Japanese media went one step further, with stories that told of how the Quintessons found the sleeping Primus before he had created anything, and harnessed his powers to build first Cybertron itself and then the Transformers. The most recent reinterpretation of the Quintesson origin story was introduced as part of the new aligned continuity established in 2010. As related in detail in the 2013 guidebook The Covenant of Primus and the 2014 novel Transformers Retribution, this new story flipped the script on the Quintessons entirely. Rather than create the Transformers, it was a Transformer who had created them, specifically Quintus Prime, one of the original 13 Transformers created by Primus at the dawn of Cybertron, who seeded the planet Quintessa with life using the mystical power of his Ember Stone. When the Quintessons discovered their creator's homeworld, they convinced its still primitive populace that they were benevolent beings who had come to advance the Cybertronian race. But no sooner had they been welcomed by the naive Cybertronians than they began systematically seizing control of the planet, enslaving the Transformers, and imposing a caste system. They were ultimately overthrown in a rebellion led by Sentinel Prime and forced off the planet, but the Transformers would encounter them again years later on the Cybertronian colony of Aquatron, which they had conquered and used as a staging base for a failed attempt to take back Cybertron. Outside of stories specifically dealing with their connection to the Transformers' origins, the 21st century has seen the Quintessons appear on and off in a variety of media, up to their usual evil tricks. Mobile games, manga, comic books from both Dreamwave Productions and IDW Publishing, and more, all of which have faithfully based them on how they were depicted in the original film and cartoon. But the funny thing is, the biggest, most widely seen, most mainstream stories to feature the Quintessons in the last 20 years have been the ones that threw out their history and totally reinvented them into something new. The first series to do this was 2004's Transformers Energon, which introduced the character known as Alpha Quintesson. While Dreamwave's unfinished Energon comic book depicted this character as more of a traditional evil Quintesson, the Energon cartoon took him in a new, more tragic direction. In it, Alpha Quintesson, or Alpha Q as he was also known, was the ruler of Planet Q until it was destroyed by Unicron. But Alpha Q survived inside Unicron. And when the events of Transformers Armada led to the Planet Eater being knocked offline, Alpha Q emerged to take control of Unicron's dormant body, intending to harness its power to resurrect Planet Q and all the other worlds the monster planet had consumed. Recreating the deceased armies of his world as Terrorcons, he sent them to steal Energon from the Autobots to fuel his plans, and after some initial conflict, the Autobots realized Alpha Q's noble goal and joined forces with him to thwart the Decepticons' efforts to co-opt Unicron's power for their own evil ends. Alpha Q eventually succeeded in his aim, creating his own pocket universe and populating it with the reborn planets. And though he died soon after when Megatron seized control of Unicron, his departed spirit would continue to serve as narrator for the cartoon until its end. In a unique touch, Alpha Quintesson didn't just have 5 faces, but 5 different personalities to go along with them, his mind having fractured due to years of isolation trapped inside Unicron. At first only 3 faces were visible, one cunning, one cowardly, and one angry. And while a calm, rational 4th would reveal itself later in the series, the 5th, Alpha Q's original personality, kept itself hidden inside his armor. Alpha Quintesson has the honor of being the only official Quintesson toy ever released, and to date, Energon remains the only cartoon, other than Generation 1, to feature the Quintessons in any form, outside of the occasional name drop.
Pick this baby up on Quintessa. Nice folks, the Quintessons.
And then there's the world of the live-action movies. 2014's Age of Extinction seemed to pay homage to the Quintessons with its revelation that a mysterious biomechanical alien race known as the Creators built the Transformers. But that was contradicted by 2017's The Last Night, which more explicitly evoked the Quintessons when it introduced Quintessa, a sort of female Quintus Prime, a self-professed god who claimed to have created the Cybertronian race. She brainwashed Optimus Prime into her service, but he broke her control and foiled her plot to drain the life force of Earth to heal the ruined Cybertron. A small figurine of Quintessa was released as part of the movie toy line, but whether or not her claims were true was left in question by the end of the film. And with the future of the movie continuity currently in doubt, it remains to be seen if any of the mysteries surrounding her and the Creators will ever be solved. Though the status they commanded in the 1980s as creators of the Transformers has been lessened over the years as Primus has overtaken them in the creation myth stakes, the Quintessons' role in the original movie ensures that they remain well remembered by even casual fans. Next to humankind, they're undoubtedly guilty of being the most important alien race in Transformers canon. And those are the basics on the Quintessons. Share your favourite Quintesson stories in the comments. Tell us if you're more of a Primus or Quintesson origin fan. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and if you can, please consider supporting the series on Patreon to get early access to new episodes.